The Galactic Empire celebrated its victory in the most brutal way possible by parading the broken bodies of two women who had once been the defiance of an entire species. Across 1,000 worlds, the broadcast was forced upon human eyes. Every screen, every hollow channel, every projected sky in every colony was made to carry the moment. The two generals, women who had led ragged human fleets with impossible courage, were dragged before the throne world's vast audience. The Empire declared them the last symbol of rebellion, the last embers of human fire. Shackled and bloodied, their eyes still carried defiance, and that alone was intolerable to their conquerors. The executions were swift and merciless. The Empire wanted not just death, but erasure. Their names were spoken once in mocking tone, and then stricken from every official record. The human colonies were ordered to forget them. But forgetting does not come by decree. Forgetting does not come when millions had once whispered their names as hope. On the outer colonies, the executions hit like a breaking wave. Miners paused in the tunnels, screens flickering in the dark. Farmers on forgotten planets dropped their tools, their fields echoing with silence. Prisoners of war, crammed into camps, bowed their heads. Soldiers who had once served under the women stared at their weapons with hollow eyes. Across the stars, a terrible weight pressed down on humanity, heavier than chains, heavier than conquest. It was a weight of despair, the sense that the last offenders of their dignity had been slain in public ritual. Many whispered that the spirit of humanity was finally broken. The Empire had done what fleets and fire could not. It had killed hope itself. But empires are never as wise as they think. The broadcasts that were meant to humiliate also spread an unintended detail. The women did not beg. They did not scream. In their final breath, they stared straight at the throne world's overseers with the same defiance that had carried them through impossible wars. That image remained in human memory even as the bodies fell. For some, that was enough to light anger. For others, it was only sorrow. And for two men, it was something else entirely. It was the breaking of chains inside their souls. The first was a man spoken of only in whispers, even among enemies. He was not a commander, not an admiral, not a politician. He had been a shadow on the battlefield, a hunter who moved unseen while wars raged around him. To the Empire, he was a ghost story, a name muttered by officers before sleep, a curse spat by survivors who had seen comrades vanish into silence. He was called the Baba Yaga, though his true name had been lost in the smoke of too many battlefields. He had fought without recognition, without rank, never at the forefront of speeches or banners, always in the shadows where fear lived. And when his wife was killed on the throne world, the last fragile restraints that kept him tethered to mercy snapped like brittle glass. He disappeared from the colony where he had hidden. No one saw him leave, no one heard a word. But those who knew him, the few who had ever glimpsed his true nature, understood. The galaxy would bleed. The second was a figure as infamous, though in different ways. Where the Baba Yaga was a silent shadow, the other was a storm that struck and vanished, leaving only corpses behind. He had been a soldier once, then something else, something darker. The Empire knew him by many names, but among his enemies he had one that lingered like poison, the American Boogeyman. The title was not chosen by him, but forced by those who survived his passing. In the chaos of war, soldiers whispered that when he came, death followed with no explanation. A camp could be thriving one night and utterly silent the next, with only bloodstains left to testify. The Boogeyman had not been seen in years, vanishing into legend, perhaps into madness. But the woman executed beside the Baba Yaga's wife was his own, and her fall summoned him from the abyss. He did not roar. He did not make vows. He simply reappeared, walking through the galaxy like a specter that had been waiting too long. The Empire believed it had secured victory. It had not. It had provoked something it could not understand. What came was not resistance. It was not rebellion. It was vengeance that wore the skin of myth. The first strike was not announced. On a mining colony controlled by the Empire, an outpost manned by 200 soldiers ceased to exist in a single night. At dawn, the facility lay silent. No alarms had been triggered, no distress calls made. The garrison was gone. Not killed in a battle, not bombarded from orbit. Gone. Rooms were found with blood, but no bodies. Weapons remained stacked where they had been left. Systems were still powered, meals half-eaten. But there were no men left to explain what had happened. The first whispers said raiders. Then, when another outpost on another world suffered the same fate, within days, the whispers changed. The name came back from the darkness, Baba Yaga. The Empire dismissed the rumors. Officials called it sabotage, banditry, desertion dressed up as legend. But soldiers in the field knew better. They remembered the old stories, the half-truths from campaigns long ago. They remembered comrades disappearing when the night seemed too still. They remembered the way officers ordered squads to stick together, not because of tactics, but because of fear. The name was not new. It had been waiting, and now it returned like a curse. Then the Boogeyman's mark appeared. A transport convoy of war supplies, munitions, fuel, medical kits, was found drifting, its engines dead. The escort vessels reported nothing. When boarding parties entered, they found no crew alive. Every soldier, every officer, every pilot had been killed with precision so ruthless that not one distress signal had escaped. Some bodies bore no wounds at all, as though death had arrived without a weapon, and yet the supplies remained untouched. The Empire could not even claim bandits had struck. There was no profit motive. There was only annihilation. Fear spreads faster than fire. Within weeks, the Empire began losing control, not because of fleets, but because of whispers. Across garrisons, soldiers muttered to each other of monsters in the dark. They repeated the names as if repeating a prayer. Baba Yaga, Boogeyman. Some laughed nervously, pretending it was old superstition. Others sharpened their knives and checked their quarters twice before sleeping. When lights flickered, men grabbed rifles. When orders came to patrol at night, officers hesitated. Fear is a weapon no empire can disarm, and it had been forged perfectly. Humanity, meanwhile, stirred in its chains. Civilians who had sunk into despair lifted their heads. The executions that had been meant to kill hope became, instead, seeds of vengeance. On colony worlds, people whispered, not of rebellion, not of armies, but of two men who hunted the hunters. Children repeated stories that soldiers feared to tell aloud. Old veterans smiled bitterly, knowing the signs. The humans did not believe they would be saved. They believed their enemies would be punished, and that was enough. The Empire began its counteroffensive with arrogance, believing that overwhelming force could crush shadows. High Command ordered new fleets into the sectors where silence had spread, and generals promised swift resolution. Their arrogance dissolved quickly. The first fleet, deployed with 20 capital ships and hundreds of escorts, was meant to patrol human colonies and stamp out fear. Instead, it returned crippled, its admiral missing, its officers speaking in broken whispers. Entire sections of their warships had been found locked from within, crews slaughtered, corridors painted red, as though predators had stalked them in their own vessels. No alarms had sounded. No boarding parties were detected. Survivors swore they had seen nothing but shadows moving in corners, then silence falling over entire decks. The Empire dismissed their testimony, but every soldier who heard them began to doubt orders. Confidence eroded, discipline bent. The fleets that had once ruled the galaxy now carried paranoia in their hulls. The second counteroffensive never launched at all. An admiral assigned to lead it was found dead before departure, her personal guards butchered in their posts. Every lock and seal remained unbroken, leaving investigators to wonder how anyone could have entered. Her death was broadcast as natural causes, but soldiers on her flagship whispered the truth. When the rumors spread, no amount of propaganda could restore faith. The men whispered of one name, Boogeyman. The Empire had killed his wife, and now he had come for them. That fear traveled faster than orders, faster than ships. The Baba Yaga moved differently. His presence was known not by slaughtered officers, but by entire fleets vanishing into nothingness. Communications relays went silent. Outposts ceased reporting. Convoys disappeared. When reinforcement arrived, there was no wreckage, no signs of battle. Only emptiness where thousands of soldiers had once stood. In desperation, Commanders began to order fleets to travel in larger formations, convinced numbers would save them. But numbers only meant more men disappeared at once. Soldiers began refusing transfers, some even deserting rather than be sent into human sectors. The mighty war machine of the Empire faltered, not from defeat in open battle, but from fear so sharp a hollow discipline like rot. Legend spread faster than reality. On one world, civilians swore that the Baba Yaga could pass through walls like smoke. On another, they told each other that the boogeyman killed with a glance, leaving men lifeless where they stood. Every culture reshaped the fear into its own myth, inventing names, adding rituals. Some said to speak the names aloud was to invite death. Others said the monsters could only be fought by fire, though none who tried lived to confirm it. The galaxy began to believe that humanity had unleashed something more than men, something more than vengeance. The Empire faced not an enemy, but a curse. The Empire tried to fight stories with stories. New broadcasts declared victories. Actors played the role of captured assassins. Hollow footage was forged as supposed executions. But the soldiers who lived through the silence knew lies when they saw them. Men who had shared barracks with comrades that never returned did not believe staged images. Propaganda was powerless against experience. Even worse, the more the Empire denied the monsters, the more it confirmed their existence. Every false victory only fueled the myth, convincing the galaxy that the truth must be far worse than officials dared to admit. Psychological collapse swept through the military. Officers reported men firing weapons at empty corridors, hearing footsteps when none were there, turning on each other in panic. Some fleets destroyed their own communications, terrified that signals would reveal their location. In one infamous incident, an entire ship detonated its reactor because the crew believed they had been infiltrated. Investigators found no sign of intruders. The Empire had always ruled by fear, but now fear had been stolen from them and wielded as a weapon against them. While the Empire unraveled, humanity stirred. Colonies that had once bowed their heads began to rise again, not with great armies, but with small acts of rebellion. Garrisons were ambushed, supply lines cut, officers assassinated by civilians who had nothing but knives and fury. The uprisings were not coordinated, not part of grand strategy, but they did not need to be. Each spark was fed by the same fire, the knowledge that the Empire was afraid. Humans no longer needed hope of victory. They only needed the certainty that their enemies were hunted by monsters and that vengeance was inevitable. Where once rebellion had been crushed by overwhelming force, now force hesitated, unsure what lurked in the shadows. The Empire tried one last gambit. They deployed their most elite hunters, assassins who had ended rebellions before they began, soldiers trained to root out resistance with surgical precision. These hunters vanished one after another. Some were found butchered in their own ships. Others never reported back at all. One squad sent after the Baba Yaga transmitted a single broken message before disappearing forever. "We are not the hunters." That message leaked despite censors, spreading across the Empire like poison. Soldiers began refusing missions. Officers abandoned posts. Fear became the true commander of the fleets. The boogeyman struck with increasing cruelty. He did not simply kill. He dismantled the sense of safety itself. An admiral found every guard outside his chamber dead, yet none had made a sound. Another commander woke to find his bridge crew butchered while he slept, his bodyguards missing, and words scrawled in blood across the command console. "I am here." He did not live to tell anyone. Even the most fortified positions offered no protection. No wall was thick enough, no lock secure enough. The boogeyman turned the Empire's own bastions into cages. Once an officer realized he was trapped, death was already there. The Baba Yaga moved with quieter malice. He struck not officers but at the machinery of empire itself. Shipyards burned, not from bombardments, but from internal sabotage that no one saw coming. Supply chains collapsed when convoys vanished. Communication networks crumbled, leaving systems isolated and unable to trust reinforcements would ever arrive. Where the boogeyman sowed terror through spectacle, the Baba Yaga spread despair through silence. He was the absence of light, the proof that nowhere was safe. Every admiral feared the boogeyman's knife. Every governor feared the Baba Yaga's silence. Between them, The galaxy became a place where fear was more real than order. On human worlds, whispers turned into songs, grim hymns spoken in dark corners. Children played games where they pretended to be hunted by shadows, laughing in ways that unsettled their parents. Old men told stories that blurred truth and myth, insisting they had once seen the monsters with their own eyes. Humanity was no longer a conquered people. It was a haunted people. Its grief turned into something the Empire could not comprehend. The executions of the two generals had been meant to kill spirit. Instead, they had created symbols of vengeance more enduring than flesh.